With me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So with the second preseason game in the books, a 29-28 victory over the Baltimore Ravens, it's only fitting that I come at you with my 7 biggest takeaways from the game. That's right, I'm feeling listy, and when I start feeling listy, I start listing things. And every list that I comprise, 7 items. So, before we get to my list of the 7 biggest takeaways from the Week 2 victory over the Baltimore Ravens in the preseason, I have an honorable mention. The special teams field goal kicking operation as a whole. Let's kind of dig in there and talk about each part of that operation. Let's start with Cam Cheeseman, because I'm going to be brutally honest with you. That dribbler that he sent back to Tress Way on a field goal attempt that cut the Ravens deficit, or lead rather, to 1 at 21-20 scared me half to death. And I had heard all camp about the struggles of Cam Cheeseman and him snapping the ball back there just like that, having it dribble back to Tress Way. A couple of field goal attempts in practice had to be aborted. And while I wanted this to simply be a practice issue, and Tress Way had to answer questions about it during a presser during the summer, in which he kind of deflected and minimized the situation. Oh, Cam's working on a new grip with the football, wants a tighter spiral, this, that, and the third. I tried to dismiss it, and I was disarmed by Tress Way, but it seeped its way into an actual game, albeit a preseason one. I don't care. It was a game. And now I am on high alert with Cam Cheeseman. Okay. The last thing we need is a long snapper issue. Hopefully, whatever issues he's having, I hope he gets them corrected by the time week 1 rolls around for the Arizona Cardinals and they're forward, because we don't need an issue with long snapping. That's a position we shouldn't be talking about. And the fact that I'm having a conversation with you right now is troubling. The next part of the operation is Tress Way. What more can I say? Tress Way is the real MVP. What can't this man do? He's an all-pro punter. He's perfect in his career as a passer, and he is a clutch holder. I mean, that snap came back there on a hop, 2 bounces, and he picked it up, and in one smooth motion, tilted it to the side, and the boot was put to it, and it went through the uprights to cut the Ravens lead to 1 at 21-20. Without that field goal, obviously we don't win the game. We only won the game by a single point, so we needed every single point, and that's what we're going to need during the regular season. Thank God there's a guy like Tress Way back there, but he shouldn't have to do that. His job should not be that hard. Simply, he should be back there on one knee, catching the football and putting it down, not having to be a first baseman scooping balls out of the dirt and putting them down to be kicked. But I love the fact there's a comforting feeling knowing that Tress Way is back there and he's one of the best in the game. And then lastly, Joey Sly. He's a Sly guy. Doo-doo, doo-doo-doo-doo. So happy for him, banging home the game winner on Monday night. But this is a continued process for him. I think he is capable of really putting a stranglehold on this kicking position to the point where we're not even looking in the offseason. There's no conversation about drafting a kicker or getting an undrafted guy to come in here and challenge him or getting a free agent to come in here and push him. I think he's got a chance to get back to where he was, not last year, but the year before, when he came on board and didn't miss a single kick down the stretch for this football team. So I think he's got the ability. The swing right now looks good. It looks smooth. He doesn't look like he's overthinking it. He's just going up there with his approach, hitting the ball, striking it well. We know he's got a monster leg. You saw it on the game winner. That thing was all the way up high on that net from 49 yards away. That thing would have been good probably from 60. I love the way he's looking right now, and I hope it continues into the regular season, and I think he's poised for a big season. That said, let's get to my list of 7 items. The 7 biggest takeaways from the Week 2 victory in the preseason versus the Baltimore Ravens. And you start with number 7. This is not a really big takeaway, but it's big enough to be on the list. And that's Andre Jones Jr., the defensive end rookie out of Louisiana, 7th round pick, is a lock to make the roster at this point. So now the question becomes 5 or 6 defensive ends. Because if this is a question of 5, then Casey Toohill's the odd man out at this point. Because just playing the numbers game in my mind and looking at the future versus the present, there's not a big enough gap between Casey Toohill and Andre Jones right now, to me at least, to where you got a guy on a rookie contract, 4 years, that you can have under contract versus a guy on the final year of his deal in Casey Toohill. I think, honestly, it's going to be 6. I don't see them cutting Casey Toohill, but I don't see them cutting Andre Jones Jr. Did you hear the way Troy Aikman and Joe Buck talked about him? Clearly, they were fed information that allowed them to talk so profusively about Andre Jones during the telecast. He had a big tackle for loss. They were talking him up for a good period of that possession in particular, but throughout the night they were mentioning him. I can't see a way that they cut him and get him back. So right now it looks like 6 to me on the defensive end position and 10 overall for the defensive line as a whole. But again, we'll see if they decide to trim off fat there and go with 5 and try to sneak one of these guys onto the practice squad, or if they go with 6, which I think is going to happen, and put KJ oh my gosh, why am I blanking on his name? You guys know who the hell I'm talking about. The 5th round pick, KJ Henry, on the practice squad. That's what it looks like right now for me. So I think he's a lock to make the roster right now. I don't think you can get away with cutting him and still getting him back on the practice squad at this point. So for me, he's a lock to make the football team. Number 6. Paging Alex Arma and Marcus Kemp. So going into this game, remember I gave you a list of 14 guys that I thought needed to have a really strong showing in order to enhance their chances to make the football team. Well, I was so excited, and I've been excited, and this one, I'm not going to lie, this one kind of made me take a step back and reassess my stance on Alex Arma making the team, because this man went from last week against the Browns playing some meaningful snaps with the first team offense out there as if he was going to be a lead blocker and, giving a different look, to not even seeing the field, but for one snap on a 2-point conversion. And so I don't really know what to do with that information. They're sending me mixed signals at this point. If they were looking to confuse, they did a hell of a job, because I don't really know what to make of Alex Arma at this point. I was convinced that he was making the team just a week ago. A week ago this time, when I was talking about my 7 biggest takeaways from the Cleveland game, one of them was Alex Arma is going to make this team. He's in the driver's seat. I'm waffling now, because he didn't play pretty much at all in this game. Now, again, it could be smoke and mirrors. And that could be their way of trying to get him onto the practice squad, not wanting to overexpose him on a national television, nationally televised game, and just keeping him under wraps so that they can get him onto the practice squad. I really, truly don't know. But how about Marcus Kemp playing like 5 snaps in the 3rd quarter? Like, when all of the guys that you think have a shot to make the team were getting in the 2nd quarter and early stages of the 3rd, Marcus Kemp barely played in the 3rd quarter and barely played at all. What's up with that? This guy made a tremendous catch last week, even though it didn't count, didn't get his feet in bounds, but it was still a tremendous catch. He knows EB, been with the Chiefs, has a rapport with him, core special teamer. You would think he would be in the mix. It didn't seem like it. Again, this seemed like a move to make sure that you don't overexpose a guy on national television that you want to keep as a practice squad player And so I'm starting to look. I never thought Marcus Kemp was going to make the team. So let's just be clear on that. But I thought he had a shot. It was an outside shot, but a shot nonetheless. After seeing this, I'm thinking they're trying to hide him so that they definitely get him on the practice squad. And Alex Armour looks like he's a candidate now for the practice squad after not playing pretty much the entire game. So I'm definitely looking at those two guys in particular, but Alex Armour is the guy that I've been touting this entire process and saying he's making the team, and his versatility at tight end and running back and all the things he brings to the table, and he can play special teams. I'm still not moving off the spot. I still think there's a roster spot with his name on it, but after this game, I'm starting to walk back that theory of him being on this football team. I'm a lot less decisive about him as I was prior to this game. Number 5. Unless something drastically changes this season, this particular regime has failed us at the linebacker position. So we watched practically the entire defense sit out of this game. The 3 guys that played early in the ball game and started with all of the backups that are going to be key contributors and starters for our defense, this season, were the 2 backers, Jamin Davis and Cody Barton, and our rookie cornerback, Emmanuel Forbes Jr. Now, Forbes held up his end of the bargain, big tackle on the second drive to stall it out, get the defense off the field. That was his final play of the night. Meanwhile, the 2 linebackers, I thought, struggled throughout the course of the night. Now, Barton had, a pseudo pass breakup on a pass to the tight end where he was right there. I think it could have been caught, and I just think the tight end didn't catch it. But he was right there. I got to give him credit. He was right there. But nonetheless, they weren't good in run support. I thought they were late a lot of times in their pass coverage drops. I don't know if it's a true Tampa 2 that they were playing where that middle linebacker is supposed to get tremendous depth and carry that tight end up the seam. But Barton looked lost, and too often we found Charlie Kohler wide open over the middle of the field with Barton kind of, twirling around, in space, covering no one. And I'm wondering what the hell is going on. These guys, I don't know if they're going to be effective or not. I actually like Cody Barton's aggressiveness in attacking the line of scrimmage. He hasn't done a great job of actually getting to the ball carrier in those instances, but I like his aggressiveness. Nonetheless, that's something we've lacked, in my opinion, from the linebacker position. Too many guys standing and watching and waiting instead of attacking after they see it. And so I just feel like this group is so underwhelming, and they have been ever since Ron and Jack got here. I think the expectation was, 2 former NFL linebackers. We're going to turn this thing around. You look at what Jack or what Ron had in Carolina with Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis and Shaq Thompson, and you just expected him to have an eye for talent and get that here in Washington, and it just hasn't manifested itself. And then what I think adds a little insult to injury for me in particular is I'm watching the Miami Dolphins play in a Week 2 preseason game versus the Houston Texans, and my guy David Long Jr. knifes into the backfield and makes a 5-yard tackle for loss, and I'm thinking to myself, he could have been in Washington. 2 years, $11 million is what this man signed for with the Miami Dolphins. Meanwhile, we're signing Cody Barton to a 1-year, $3.5 million deal. You add $2 million to that deal, and you could have had yourself David Long, right? Like, I'm just boggled at the mind as to how our linebacker position has gotten to where it's at right now. Because right now, it seems like it is a non-competitive group. I hope I'm wrong. I hope these guys play really well this season. But right now, I'm not convinced. And that game didn't do anything for my confidence level with the linebacker position. As far as I'm concerned, they failed us at the linebacker position. This was a deep linebacker free agency crop with a bunch of young guys going into the prime of their careers, and it didn't cost a lot of money. As you can see, the top 2 guys got paid a ton of money. TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds got a bunch of money. Everybody else pretty much signed for peanuts, and we didn't go after any of them. That's frustrating. And I get it. There was a whole ownership change and things might have been locked up. I'm still frustrated anyway. 4. Kaz Allen ain't trying to make the team, man. Why do I say that? So he's been dropping the football in camp. That's no secret. I thought he caught the ball actually well on Monday night. I think there was one pass that he probably could have caught, but he didn't. But that's not a big deal. He made some big catches on that final drive of the game to set up the game-winning field goal. However, there was a particular kickoff, the one that to start the second half. You know the one I'm talking about. The very first kickoff, Washington lost the toss. Ravens received the opening kickoff and marched right down the field and scored the opening touchdown of the game. So Washington then received the ball after half. And that ball was 3 yards deep into the end zone, and Kaz Allen catches it and takes a knee. I've watched every single preseason game just about this preseason, with the exception of the ones that didn't have starters playing specifically at the quarterback position. There haven't been a ton of them this preseason. A lot of teams are putting their starters out on the field. And I've watched a lot of preseason football in my life in general. And if you're trying to make the team, if you're an undrafted guy, if you're a core special teamer, if you're a return specialist, which Kaz Allen essentially is, every opportunity, if the ball is not kicked out of the back of the end zone, or you're not fielding this thing 6-7 yards deep in the end zone and it's going over your head and towards the goalpost, you should be bringing it out. Every guy that I've watched who's back there on kickoffs, who's undrafted, who's a 6th or 7th round pick out of Southwest Saginaw Valley State, at receiver or corner or running back that's trying to make the team, he's bringing the bitch out 5 yards deep, because you're not going to make the team taking a knee, catching the football 3 yards deep. You're not showcasing what you can bring to the table by taking a knee with the football just being 3 yards deep into the end zone. This is not the regular season. In the regular season, fine. You want to take a knee? You've already made the team? Take a knee. Let us get it at the 25-yard line. You're trying to make the squad? You can't do it taking a knee. He didn't get another opportunity to return a kickoff the remainder of the game. And he had the audacity to have an attitude when the last kickoff went over his head and out of bounds. He's like, oh, why? You didn't return the one that you should have. You ain't trying to make the team. You ain't trying to make the team. Because if you a real dog, you are chomping at the bit to get an opportunity to return anything you get your hands on. And, by the way, that last punt that he fielded when the score was 28-26, when we got the football back just with a shade over 2 minutes to go in the game, he bobbled that thing. I don't know if you saw that. Go back and watch it. He bobbled and double caught that thing. I don't trust his ass. You say what you want about Dax Milne. At least the offense is guaranteed to take the field. I like Kaz Allen. I want to love him, but these things are making me question, how bad do you want it, bro? Anyway, to me, he, being Kaz Allen, and Dax Milne are fighting for one spot. Because I've already told you, I told you this after the Cleveland game, 5 wide receiver spots are already spoken for. Somebody said, however, and they were right about this, why can't we keep 7? We can. And that person said, hey, we kept 7 before, and he's right. 2 years ago, DeAndre Carter and Dax Milne both made the team. We kept 7 wide receivers. It's not out of the realm of possibility. They can keep 7 if they so choose. Dax Milne is making this team. Okay? In my mind, Kaz Allen hasn't done enough to remove Dax Milne from the equation, and Milne is still a better receiver. So right now in my mind, Dax Milne is on this team because he serves multiple purposes. Worst case scenario, you need a guy to go back there and field kickoffs and punts. Dax Milne can do both. I know you don't want to hear that, but it's true. And he's still a really good wide receiver. So I think he's making the team over Kaz Allen right now. And Allen has one more game to try to change their minds. I don't think it's going to be enough, but we'll see what happens. The bottom line is you need to be taking advantage of every single opportunity that you get. I don't feel like Kaz Allen is doing that. He ain't trying to make the team. 3. A healthy Sadiq Charles is starting at left guard, and Trent Scott is making the 53-man roster. So let's break these things down and take them in the order that I delivered them. So a lot of you, I don't think, initially knew Sadiq Charles was even on the field at left guard because he kept it nice and quiet in week 2 of the preseason. He did a bang-up job. Now, there are a couple of things he could clean up. There were a couple of times where I thought he got caught kind of leaning over his toes a bit and lost his balance, but he was still able to produce a good enough block to give Sam an opportunity to step up, and that's what's most important. But all in all, I thought he did a solid job, and we didn't really hear his name called. And that's a good thing when you're on the offensive line. It means you're doing your job. Unless you mollywop somebody and they show it and they're like, hey, this guy is really kicking ass, you would love to have that happen. But if they're not going to mention you, then it means that you've kept it nice and quiet. No penalties, nothing like that. So got through the game healthy, and let's hope that it continues to be that way. But if he's healthy, you already know he's your starting left guard. And this was a proof of that here in week number 2. Trenton Scott. So this is something I don't know if a lot of you realized watching this game. I went back and watched it again because I asked myself, in that shot with our guy, Sam, right? After he throws the touchdown pass to Diami and Diami goes over and he's doing his thing, he's like this, and you got Antonio Gibson over there, yeah, and you got Sam over there, yeah. I see number 73 in the corner, like, yeah, and I'm like, is that Trent Scott? What is he? Was he on the field? So I go back and I watch the game a second time, and upon watching it the second time, what I realize is that after the second drive of the game, I believe it was after the first drive, I think it was. After the first drive of the game, we got the field goal. Andrew Wiley comes out of the game. Now, remember, he was dealing with a little something. They put a sleeve on his knee. But he came out and he played, and he was effective. And then they took him out after the first possession. And they already had Cornelius Lucas at left tackle because Charles Leno Jr. didn't play. So they stuck Trenton Scott in at right tackle, and you didn't even know he was there because he did a hell of a job. And he kept it quiet on the right side. He did his job, gave Sam ample time. So that means you had 2 backup tackles in the game for the duration, pretty much, other than the first drive. You had backup tackles on both ends for Sam Howell for pretty much the entire first half. And there wasn't a peep out of the Ravens. Again, it was their second and third string. Don't care. We had backup tackles in, and they took care of business. And then Trenton Scott, after the first team offense came off the field at halftime, he moves over from right tackle to left tackle and plays the entire third quarter at left tackle and does a great job. You don't hear a peep out of him over there either. So again, his versatility. And even though he can play guard, it's about his ability to play tackle. Because what we've seen with our group is that at some point we're going to need Cornelius Lucas in the game. And when he goes in, you need another guy that can back him up. That guy is Trenton Scott. And I'm going to tell you right now, we've done this song and dance multiple times. The most recent being Sharp. That we traded with the Raiders and got Sharp like 3 years ago. This is the best fourth tackle we've had in a long time, Trenton Scott. I was impressed with what I saw from him in this game against backups. And again, keep in mind, it was backups. But he shouldn't be in the game. But in a pinch, if you have to, I think he can get the job done. He played a lot of snaps, kept it awfully quiet. I think I've said this already, but I'm doubling down now. Trenton Scott's making the football team. We're keeping 4 tackles. Number 2. Cornerback number 5, CB5, is wide open. Does anybody know what's going on at CB5? Like, seriously. I think the prevailing thought going into the second preseason game is that this was probably Christian Holmes's, spot to lose. He was ahead of the rest of the field at CB5 after he had about 3 or 4 hits in the Browns game that broke up, pass completions. And, it just seemed like couple that with his special teams ability that we saw in his rookie season, him already being a draft pick, that always helps. It just felt like he had the inside track to CB5. But then watching the game on Monday night and seeing how that unit struggled as a whole, there wasn't a single corner that played well outside of Emmanuel Forbes Jr. Every other corner that stepped on the field had issues, most notably Rashad Wildgoose, who was a guy that I thought might have been the closest in terms of competition to Christian Holmes. He was awful. He might have played himself out of a roster spot on Monday night. Took bad angles in tackle pursuit. Gave up a terrible pass interference because he got beat. Gave up the touchdown pass. He tried to contest that one pretty good, but he still gave it up nonetheless. Gave up a ton on his side. It was like they were targeting him exclusively because they knew they could. So I feel like Rashad Wildgoose played himself out of a spot a la Danny Johnson last year. I thought Tariq Castro-Fields had done some good work up until preseason game 2. I was expecting to see him earlier. Really didn't see him do anything, but he didn't get into the third quarter, which was a shock to me. So I really felt like they gave Wildgoose a chance, and he blew it. He laid an egg. The goose laid an egg. And Christian Holmes wasn't that much better. He didn't do anything that well himself. He got beat a couple of times. And so I don't really know what cornerback 5 looks like. I still believe it's Christian Holmes' job to lose, and Sip will ultimately be your 5th corner. But I think this is one of those positions that is going to literally go down to this third preseason game. Remember 2 years ago where we didn't really know what was going to happen at the back end of the cornerback position? And in the third and final preseason game against the Ravens, one guy played well and everybody else played like straight garbage. If you remember, it was one of the worst preseason games I ever watched. We got dominated thoroughly by the Ravens, and the defense was just god-awful. But the nickel corner from Detroit played so well. He was the only guy, really, that he ended up making the team off of that game. Ron was so pissed after that performance. I think there's another situation like that could occur here against Cincinnati, that they go into this game not necessarily having anybody written in marker at CB5. It's more like written in pencil, and anybody can have the name erased and have their name written in there with a strong performance in week 3 of the preseason, the final game at home versus Cincinnati. I think CB5 is a wide open right now. If they're even keeping 5 corners. They kept 4 before, if you recall. They've kept 4. And that's, matter of fact, it was last year. They kept 4 corners and then went out on the streets and found Wildgoose and Castro Fields. So this could be a playback of last year. They keep 4, and the guy that ultimately occupies a roster spot here in Washington isn't on the roster as we speak right now. That could be in consideration as well. I think CB5 is wide open. All possibilities are still on the table, including the guy not actually being on the roster right now. That's how poor the performance was against the Ravens in week 2 of the preseason. Nobody stepped up and said, hey, I'm the man for the job. So now it's anybody's guess as to what happens at CB5. We'll see. And then finally, numero uno. Number 1. Sam Howell showed he's ready for this opportunity. And new Howell order. So that was the thing we were looking for the most in this game, is how is Sam going to play? The offensive line did their job. I thought it was a pretty clean performance by the offensive line. Sam had so much time to throw the football. And somebody said in a comment to me that, He's holding on to the ball too long. Well, you're not wrong. He is holding on to the ball for a very long time, but it's because the offensive line is affording him that kind of time to hold on and go through all these progressions and reads. Sometimes, even on the first sack, I don't think Sam needed to get out of there. I think a flash of color, not his own, came across, but that guy was handled. Okay? That guy got blocked. I think it was Cosme who kind of mollywopped that dude and pushed him out of the way, and Sam freaked. He got spooked and left the pocket. I don't think he needed to do that. While he was taking care of business at right tackle on an island by himself, he ran into pressure with Wiley, which wasn't there. All he had to do was slide over, and he would have had a lot more time to just sit there. And if he wanted to take off, he could have run. But anyway, Howell showed so much poise, confidence. The unflappability is something that I think really bodes well for him. The sack that I just talked about that he ended up taking, bringing up a third and, 14, 15, and then throws a 16-yard dart to Cole Turner to make up for that mistake. You saw time and time again him standing there, go through his reads. Even if it wasn't there, check it down. Live to fight another day. Hell, even on a 3rd and 6, the temptation as a young quarterback is to try to fit it in there somewhere. He checks it down to Antonio Gibson. AG gets a 3-yard gain. It's 4th and 3. They go for it, right? And Ron has shown the ability to do that in the regular season. Like, we're kind of in no man's land. We could send Joey Sly out there. It's a pretty long attempt. We don't want to punt it with Tresh. You're not going to really net a whole bunch from that. Let's just go for it. And he gave them an opportunity to go for it, only needing 3 yards. They convert. The ball was tipped. And it's sort of lucky, but luck counts too. And Jahan was able to secure the ball, get up the field, and that helped set up the touchdown pass to Antonio Gibson about 3 or 4 plays later. So, again, Sam is making all of the right decisions, not forcing it, and hasn't thrown an interception all preseason. High completion percentage, up over 70% completion percentage. And it's not like he's just dinking and dunking, I still think a lot is left to be desired with the screen game. We had one successful screen the entire preseason, and that was on the first possession of the game against the Ravens. It was 3rd and 4. They throw a screen to Brian Robinson out of the backfield. He catches it. He gets his ankles hit. He stumbles forward, dives, and barely gets the first down. That's the only successful screen we've thrown to this point. Everything else has pretty much been either a loss of yards or, a non-starter. You haven't gotten much of anything off of it. So they got to continue to work on the screen game. I think it's going to come around, and it's going to be a big factor for us. But Sam showed that this opportunity is not too big for him, and he's ready to seize this opportunity. And remember, we talked about this in the offseason. This could be his only chance. If Ron and company aren't back next year, there's no guarantee that the new GM comes in here and is a fan of Sam Howell. He definitely didn't draft Sam. And so he could have been with another organization that had a 5th round grade on Sam and doesn't think highly of him coming out of North Carolina. And that could be it. That new GM comes in here, they hire a coach, they put their brains together, and they say, hey, let's go out and get our own quarterback. He has to take advantage of this opportunity. And I thought week 2 of the preseason showed that he's not only ready, willing, but he's able to take advantage of this opportunity. And I think he's going to be fantastic for the Commanders this upcoming season. You know what it is already. I digress. Those new order 7 biggest takeaways from the week 2 29-28 victory over the Baltimore Ravens, snapping their 24-game preseason win streak. Did I leave something out? Did I miss something? Do you disagree with something that I listed? Leave it down in the comment section. Can't wait to read your responses. Until then, you guys, have a good one. You know what it is. I'll see you on Thursday when we break down the 53-man roster. I'm going to have my projections for this team and what I think is going to take place. So we will be live Thursday night. breaking down the 53-man roster. The rosters will be announced on the 29th. If I'm not mistaken, the 29th is a Thursday? Or, excuse me, a Tuesday. I think the 29th is a Tuesday. So, the preseason game is Saturday. The rosters have to be finalized at 53 on Tuesday by 4 o'clock. So we'll be, hearing cuts, and I think they'll make them in waves. They don't have to, but the guys that don't have a shot are going to be the first ones to be cut, and I think they'll come out in waves, right? First set of guys will be chopped down probably Sunday. There'll be another list of guys maybe chopped down on Monday. And then I think they'll get to those final tough cuts, guys that they really want to keep on the practice squad on Tuesday before 4 o'clock. But whatever the case may be, I'll give you my projections for the 53-man roster on Thursday night. Should be a fun show. And we'll preview the Week 3 contest of the preseason versus the Cincinnati Bengals. All of that and more Thursday night live. I look forward to chopping it up with you. Until then, you guys, have a good one. Take care. See you next time.